Buddy, I'm Lisa Shield, and this is Lunch with Lisa. It is so nice to see you all. And I guess today I am going to talk about three major mindset shifts I had to go through in order to find the guardian of my soul. And I think this is really important because our mindset really is the key to everything. The one thing we do have control over is our thoughts. And I remember when I was much younger, my thoughts, I felt like, the old television screen where you had the ant races, the black and white, like it was just all those, we called them the ant races because it was like just when the connection would die, you would see those little bitty dots almost like going across the screen. And that felt like a metaphor for what was going on in my mind. I had no control, no choice over my thought process. There were just racing thoughts that were going through my brain. And as I started to do personal work on myself and, started to meditate and really do personal growth work, this is where I started to look at my thinking, my mindset, and how that was affecting the choices I made in my life. And then I started to ask myself some very, very important questions. I think this is often what happens in therapy. You go in to see a therapist and they start to help you direct your thought process and gain control or dominion over your thinking so that you can make better choices. And then by making better choices, you can, shifting your perspective on things, you can start to guide and direct your life and start to consciously create the life you want for yourself. For a long time, I didn't understand that I even had the power to do that. I didn't, we all think we're making choices, and those choices very often are really pre-programmed just because you walk into a an ice cream parlor and you say, I'll have chocolate chip, or, I want coffee ice cream or bubblegum ice cream. I don't know. But let's say you go in and you think, okay, bubblegum ice cream is the best ice cream. And that decision, that thought may actually, you feel like you're making a choice. You're looking at all of those flavors and you pick bubblegum because that's your favorite. But that could have actually been influenced by a parent or a friend or somebody who along the way said, oh no, you got to get bubble gum because, all the cool people get bubblegum ice cream. And so, if you want to be cool, you want to get the bubblegum ice cream instead of the chocolate chip. So our choices are often influenced by our parenting, by our religious bias, by our political bias. I'm reading a book right now, and I wish I could think of the name. I think it's called Irrationally Unpredictable, something like that. And he is talking in this book about how our choices are influenced by so many things. Like if you go into a store and you're going to buy a television set, they will price the TV sets in such a way that there will be a low, middle, and high price television set. And it doesn't mean that the most expensive television set is the best one, and then the middle priced one is the second best, and so on. It might mean that they have more of that middle priced TV set, and they know that most people are going to buy the middle priced one. And so they put one very high and they put one low and one in the middle. People usually won't buy the most expensive thing on a menu at a restaurant, but they'll buy the next most expensive thing. So they know how to manipulate our choices by price. It's one of the ways that they do that. So um, our choices, our mindset is influenced by so many things. So let's talk about some of the mindset shifts as I started to look at my love life. Many of you have heard me say I was 39 years old. I'd been married before to a pathological liar. I stayed in that relationship for 13 years. And I came out of that marriage and I said to myself, I can't do this again. I can't keep going in and out of bad marriages or bad relationships. I need to get this figured out. And it took me a long time. It took me about 8 years from when I left my first husband to when I met uh, Benjamin, my current husband, who I'm about to celebrate 20 years together with in September. I'm very excited about that. I can't believe how these 20 years have flown. And I will tell you that time flies when you're having fun. It really does. So I started to look, especially when I came out of my first marriage and I was 34 and I spent some years dating, um, just going on dates, meeting men, life circumstances brought some people into my life and all. But I was always aware that I really didn't want to keep going from relationship to relationship to relationship, hoping that I was just going to meet the right guy. And I knew as I was doing a lot of personal growth work on myself in those years, I got a master's in spiritual psychology. I went to a 12-step program. I worked on I did a lot of dreaming work with Don Miguel Ruiz, who wrote the Four Agreements and Landmark Forum, whatever I could find that really felt like it might hold some answers for me. I did all of this work so I could start to understand myself and love myself better. And then I I got to a point where I was about to turn 40. It was kind of my biggest nightmare. I talk about this too, but it was. I was going to be 40. I'm about to celebrate my 61st first birthday. In fact, my roommate from college, Joy, it's her 61st birthday today. And I just sent her right before this I just sent her a message wishing her a happy birthday. I'm about to turn 61. And these are, birthdays can be times of deep reflection if we want them to be, especially when we're turning the page or opening the chapter on a new decade. So I was about to turn 40 and I was looking at my love life and I realized that I was about to be 40 and single and dating in Los Angeles, which really was horrifying for me. So I don't know, if you've never been to LA or if you've never really looked around, it is filled with some of the most stunningly beautiful, fit, successful women you've ever seen in your life. And that was daunting for me because I realized that I was not the youngest, prettiest, smartest, most successful woman in the room. I was turning 40. It was a new decade. And something just felt like it was going to be different dating in my 40s. And I stopped and I started to look at what I was doing in my love life. What was I doing? What could I do better? What could I do differently? Well, one thing was I knew that it was never easy for me to connect with men. Not really. I think that I got male attention. I could get dates, But I never, ever, ever really felt like I knew what I was doing. If I went on a date with a guy, um, I never really felt comfortable sitting across from a man on a date. I didn't know what men were looking for from me. I didn't know how to really talk to them or what they wanted to talk about. I mean, could I talk about things? Yeah, I had an interesting life. I thought I was an interesting person. So the first mindset shift that I made was that I started to ask myself, who am I as a woman? What does it mean to me to be a woman? I'd never really thought about that before. I'd never really stopped and asked myself, what does it mean to me to be a woman? And what kind of impression did I want to make on a man? Right? I had in many ways pushed that part of myself away. And I'd done what so many women today are doing. I'd focused on my career, I'd focused on traveling, building friendships, even doing a lot of my personal growth work. And I just kept thinking, oh, well, certainly if I do all these things, I'm going to run into the right guy. But that hadn't happened. And I started to think about what if I were to sit back and really embrace and evolve and, cultivate this feminine part of myself that I never really had consciously explored. And I asked myself, first, I thought, well, what am I looking for? What do I want in a man? Well, many women would say, I want a real man. I want a man who's, what this. I want a man who's that, who's confident, who's strong, who's successful in his business, who's whatever, you fill in the blank. But most women have this sort of, I want a real man idea. And then I asked myself, well, what kind of woman would he be looking for? And am I exuding those qualities? Do I bring that to the table? And I realized that I wasn't very confident or comfortable in myself as a woman. I was confident in the fact that I was worldly and educated and I had a cool career. I was confident in the fact that I had interesting friends and interesting friendships. But I didn't really feel confident with men as a woman. I felt uncomfortable with men seeing me as a sex object, looking at me, and deciding if they were attracted to me or they weren't. I didn't feel comfortable with my body and my physical form. I didn't feel comfortable or confident about the way I spoke to men. I didn't know how to speak to men without being needy or desperate or insecure. If they did something wrong, I could take them to task because I felt like I was right and I had a reason to speak up for myself. But when it came to more subtle things like being able to express my wants and needs and have boundaries with men, that I didn't know how to do. And I realized that so much of what I knew about men might not even be true, which leads me to my second shift. I started to question everything I thought I knew about men, who they are, what they're looking for from us in a relationship. And I really started, um, my dad was a womanizer and an alcoholic, and he left my mother when I was very young for another woman. So I didn't have a great role model in my dad. And I really didn't know many men who I admired. I had very few close connections with men at that point in my life. I did have some male friendships, but to be honest, I always felt uncomfortable and awkward around men. So I decided to start to understand men, to see who they are, right? Who are they? What are they looking for in a woman? What are the things that turn them on and turn them off? And I started to put myself in a man's shoes. I'm going to throw this out there. One of the most challenging books I've ever read, but one of the best books is a book called Why Men Are the Way They Are. It's a pretty incredible book. It was a total paradigm shift for me because when I read it, it just made me completely rethink the way I look at men. And it's one of the things. I don't have women in my 12-week emotionally naked dating program. I do not have them read the whole book, but I do have them listen to a 2-hour interview with the author. I think it kind of, cuts to the chase, but the whole book is just illuminating. I had so many misconceptions about men, so many things that I took for granted, or, a lot of ideas about who men are that were just erroneous, things that I had learned from other women, but not from men. And what I started to see is that not all men were like my dad. There were kind, compassionate men who just are tripping over themselves to try to make us happy. They are intelligent and educated. There are some very sharp men who know exactly what they're looking for. And they can get very turned off very quickly. We sit on dates and we just sit there and we're assessing, we're in our own heads thinking about who this man is, and well, I don't like this and I don't like that, and well, he doesn't have this and he doesn't have that. Those men are listening to us talk, and they can hear how self-absorbed we are, how our lives are so busy, we have no room for our world in a man, how we say, well, I want a man, but I don't need a man, which isn't a great feeling for a man. A guy hearing that, we think we're trying, to say, I'm not needy. But what men often hear is, oh, well, then if you don't, really have a need for a man in your life, then I'm not interested in being with a woman like that. I think if a man ever said to me, I want a woman, but I don't need a woman, I would run the other way. Because the truth is that two people in a relationship need each other. When you have a truly interdependent relationship with a partner, you need each other. You develop a need. So I know I need my husband. I wouldn't want to live with life without him. And we're so beautifully connected and such wonderful partners, but we need each other. And I know what my life would be like without him. And it's not a life I would ever, I want to have. I love male companionship. There are things that men bring to our lives that we cannot get from our friends and our girlfriends and our male friends and our brothers or our parents, our fathers. When you are in a loving, connected, romantic relationship with a wonderful man, oh my God, that's where we shine. In fact, one of the most beautiful things of all is that I see the women in our 12-week program, and even more so in our longer, we have a longer program, which is a year long, that some women decide to continue on, continue doing after they do the first course. In our mastermind, our year-long mastermind, we really get to see the full evolution of these women as they go from being single to finding the guardians of their souls. And then we get to watch them blossom, really become feminine and, awaken their feminine in these relationships in a way that you're never going to get, going to a goddess retreat and putting on flowy dresses and dancing around a fire, and burning your fears. Like, you're not going to get that. You're not going to get what you get from finding the guardian of your soul anywhere else. And so part of that is you've got to make room for a man. You've got to understand men. You have to know who they are. And I am not talking about doing this like so many approaches do. It's all up here. It's all in your brain. Men are like this, men are like that. Do this, do that. My work is from the heart. It's all about compassion, developing compassion for men. And so the women who go through my program, and the big shift I made was that I started to really look at how to have deep compassion for men, how to understand things like the number of cues a man is looking for on a date when he's sitting across from you, just to see if he can kiss you, just to tell if you're attracted to him. Men risk rejection constantly, and we don't even think about how painful it is for them, how hard it is for a really sweet guy to go in for a kiss and to have a woman recoil and pull away, and what that must feel like for a man to go through that experience. Many women do not understand that just because all we hear about is that men want sex, we don't hear about all the men who have gotten rejected and are afraid to initiate sex with women because they've been so harshly rejected, and they're paralyzed with fear because they don't know how to do that. We expect men to initiate everything, like somehow they have this playbook, and men take the lead, and they know, how to pick the restaurant and what kind of restaurant that we should go to, and, to call us 3 days before the date to make sure, we know that we're still on, and to keep texting us morning and night, to say good morning, and to say, how was your day? And to ask us questions about ourselves. There's a lot of really wonderful men who didn't get your playbook. They don't know. You have to tell them, and you have to learn how to let them know what you need in a way that's not shaming. I didn't know any of these things. Nobody taught me how to do this. I had to stop in my life and admit, Lisa, you know almost nothing about men. Just because a man is attracted to you and you can get a date and a guy will plan a date and take you out, that doesn't mean you know what he's looking for, that you know how to talk to him, how to ask for what you want and need from a man in a relationship. We have so much to learn in this part of our lives. I was on a call right before this, and I was talking to a woman who's in a terrible situation. She's in a relationship with a man. She moved in with him, and he turned out to be completely avoidant. 5 days after she moved in, he did a 180 and just became a monster, like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde situation. And now she's living with him. She's been there 2.5 months. They're in separate bedrooms. I mean, it's really a nightmare. But we were on the call, and it's almost like she thought like there was some simple solution to this, right? Like I said to her, well, you've got to learn how to recognize these signs, and you have to learn about men and how to pick a good man and how to trigger these kinds of responses sooner so that this doesn't happen again. And she said, well, I don't understand. How do you know until you get into the relationship? I mean, you got to get into the relationship. I mean, I couldn't have prevented this. And I was listening to her and I was thinking, well, yeah, you could have. Had you worked with me, this wouldn't have happened. Or if it had happened, it would have happened much sooner so that you wouldn't have moved in with him only to find out that he's got an avoidant personality disorder. So there's a lot to learn about this part of our lives. And what we've been taught is, oh, I'm just going to go on a date. I'm just going to keep going on enough dates. And if I go on enough dates, of course, I'm just going to meet the right man. We're going to fall in love and live happily ever after till death do us part. Bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. You've got to make these mindset shifts. You've got to start to look at how you're showing up, the choices you're making, where there are gaps in your knowledge. Another thing, big mindset shift for me, was when I started to put myself in a man's shoes and see women the way men see us. And I started to really look at all the things about women. Now, as a woman, I know what annoys me about men. I could rattle off a whole list of those things. But what I didn't know and what I couldn't have told you was all the things that men really find annoying about women. And believe me, they got a big old long list just like you and me of the things that men do to annoy us. So I started to ask myself, what would some of those behaviors be? What are the things that men really like when they talk about women? What are they saying about us? What are the things that we do that drive them crazy? What are the turnoffs for men? And then I had to ask myself, Lisa, do you do those things? Do you do those things? Are you shaming with men? Are you emasculating? Do you talk down to them? Do you get like a mothering tone, like a school teacher? Do you admonish them when they do something wrong? Do you lecture? Do you plead? Are you needy sometimes? How does that feel to a man? Is there a better way to communicate those things than you're doing right now? If a man upsets you and you want to treat him with respect, you can't talk down to him. You can't talk at him. And if your goal is to make a man want to come closer to you, if you do shame him, berate him, talk down to him, or take a you should have known better kind of tone, right? Oh, all you had to do was send me a text. It takes 2 seconds to send a text. If you talk to a guy like that, he's not going to like it very much. You do it enough, and he's going to disappear, because no man, no real man, is going to let a woman talk to him that way. And you'll never know why. If you're complicated, if you sit around and talk about your girlfriends and stuff he doesn't care about, and you try to turn him into your therapist, and you go on and on and on about stuff that really he doesn't know what to do, that isn't really of interest, he's going to get bored and go away. I had to learn how to be fun and playful with men. I had to learn how to be able to talk about the things and open up, the parts of me that men were looking to experience when they were with me. They didn't want to sit around and talk about, you know, work and my job. And most really great guys, when they come to women, they want to enjoy our femininity and they want to have fun. Those other things, sure, if something comes up, you talk about it, you learn how to talk about it quickly, and then move on from it. Most guys don't want to sit around and analyze things with us the way our girlfriends do. They want to solve it. They want to give us their advice. They want to help us fix it and move on and get back to having fun and playfulness and all. Now, I'm not saying there aren't guys who want to have heavy conversations or serious conversations or whatever, but really great, successful, fun men, they want to play with women. They get a lot of intensity at work. They get it from their male colleagues. If you read about male imposter syndrome, men are under a certain kind of stress all day, every day at work. They're worried about being discovered as an imposter, that somebody could take their job away, they could get fired. And a man's identity is connected to his work in a very different way than a woman's is. And so constantly for men, it is all dog eat dog, constant competition. They're just waiting for some other guy to come up and, pull the rug out from under them or be more, make them look bad. And they go through this all day, every day at work. And they really want to be top dog. And so when they come to a woman, or on a Sunday afternoon, they may just want to zone out and watch a football game and not have to think. They need a lot more time just to process internally and reset themselves. And if a woman is too intense, she's going to overwhelm him. We've got to learn how to give men space. So I started to put myself in a man's shoes and ask myself, what would, as a woman who really loves this man, and it's very important, if you're going to love a man, you really have to love and understand men. I decided to put myself in a man's shoes and ask myself, what are the things I might be doing without even meaning to that would really be annoying to men and might be pushing them away, turning them off. Now, a lot of you are sitting there because I know women, we sit there and it's like, well, why is it always us? Why do I have to change? Why do I have to put myself in a man's shoes? Why doesn't he have to put himself in my shoes and look at me from his perspective and think about all the things he's doing to annoy me? Well, if I were coaching men, if that was my audience, you better believe I would be saying that to a man. But back to how I started this original conversation. I can't change all men. That's not what my work is. My work is to help women attract and have better relationships with men. So the way to do that is by working on ourselves, by changing the things we can change so that we can attract better men. And here's the thing that the women who are saying, well, why don't the men change? And why is it all up to me? And yada, yada, yada. Let's push the blame off on the men, right? What happens when you up level your game, you start attracting better men. You attract men who want women like that, who want women who understand men. And those men, by and large, understand women. They get, a woman who is superior, a woman who thinks about men, who understands men, a woman who's in touch with her own femininity, a woman who knows how to play and have fun. The more you open up these parts of yourself, the better men you'll start to attract. Those men are out there. They're looking for women who have already done their work. And I'll tell you, there are men who have done their work. My husband had spent 8 years of his life in therapy, working with a mentor and a coach who he admired and respected. And he did weekly group therapy. These guys are out there, but you better believe they can tell an evolved woman from an unevolved woman. So my suggestion is that you start to make these mindset shifts. You start to look at yourself. You start to really look inside and ask yourself, how can I really step into being a woman so that I can attract a real man? How do I embrace my femininity? What are my misconceptions about men? All of the lies and stories I've been told about who men are. Can I challenge those beliefs and start to develop real compassion for men? And how can I put myself in a man's shoes and start to see women the way men see us? What are the things that turn men off about women? Am I exhibiting any of those behaviors? And what can I do to start to let those behaviors go or find better ways to communicate my wants and needs and better ways to connect with men and talk to men? All right, everybody, this has been another Lunch with Lisa. It has been a pleasure. This is one of 2 episodes I release every week for my podcast. I do a second episode with my husband called Getting Inside the Right Male Mind. We are getting phenomenal feedback on the podcast. The name of our podcast, if you look for it on Spotify, Apple, or anywhere you get your podcasts, you want to look for Dating Without Drama. So that's the name of the podcast, and there are 2 weekly episodes. Please tell everyone you know, your mother, your sisters, your brothers, your uncles and aunts and friends and nieces and nephews. It's important that we learn how to date like adults, not 15-year-old girls, that we start to mature and have adult relationships. And that's what this podcast is about. So please, please, please go to lisashield.com. You can find //podcast. That's where you can find all of the previous episodes. If you want to find even more older recordings from me, you can go to my YouTube channel and give it a thumbs up. I love seeing those numbers go up. It lets me know that we're on the right track. So subscribe to my YouTube channel and give us a thumbs up. You can comment on any of the videos you see there. You can also rate and like this podcast, and feel free to give us honest feedback. Look, I'm not here to be the answer for everybody. I just want to be the answer for the women who really resonate with my message. And the last thing is, if you do have some ideas for podcasts for future topics, please send them to podcast@lisashield.com. Thank you so much. I wish you a beautiful day, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye. Oh, one last thing. I forgot. The most important thing of all, if you want to work with us, my husband and I teach an incredible 12-week transformational program called Emotionally Naked Dating. It is a game changer. If you really want to learn how to integrate this work, it's one thing to come on a podcast and listen, but information is not transformation. And believe me, you think you're learning a lot from these podcasts, you ain't learned nothing. Nothing, because the women in my 12-week course, they change their lives. And usually in 6 to 18 months after completing it, they find the guardians of their souls. So if you want to stop wasting precious time and get this solved now, then do our course. Stop listening to these podcasts. Information is not transformation. Just because you listen to this podcast and you go, gosh, I learned a lot. And I think now, okay, I'm going to be more feminine and I'm going to make these 3 shifts. There's a lot more to making these 3 shifts than just hearing about it on a podcast episode. And the women who do my program know that. So please go to lisashield.com, check out my beautiful new website, and click on the buttons. They're all over the website to watch my free 45-minute presentation. When you watch the presentation, it will take you to at the very end, you will be able to sign up for a breakthrough call with me or a member of my team to talk about how we can help you get this solved. So please sign up for that call, but only sign up for a call if you are ready to invest the time and money it takes to work on this part of your life. And do not sign up if you're not ready to do that. It is an investment to work with us, but it will be the best investment you've ever made in your life. The ROI, the return on investment in this part of your life is greater than anything else you could possibly do. You can invest in your business and hire a business coach. Sure, you'll make more money. You can buy a house. You can go on vacations. But if you don't have a loving partner to share that with, that gets old. When you invest in love, this is the number 1 contributor to happiness, is a loving, safe, beautiful, lifelong partnership. You also will be investing in bringing in a partner who will bring a paycheck, who will create a retirement with you. If one of you would happen to lose your job, the other person can pick up the slack. If one of you gets sick, the other one will be there to hold down the fort until they can get back in the work world. So you have a support system in life. You're not just relying on yourself. People who are in healthy, loving, lasting relationships live on average, 10 years longer. The stress of doing life alone and growing old alone releases stress hormones that suppress your immune system and make you more susceptible to long-term illness and disease. And finally, you have someone to create adventures with, to go on trips with, to wake up in the morning and just sit and have a cup of coffee with, someone to talk to and laugh with. If you're younger, have babies with. There is nothing in your life that will give you the rewards and riches that getting this solved will. So please go to lisashield.com and watch my presentation. And I will see you next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Thanks for listening.